nodded. If it's real, it changes everything. Tarkin ships and technology were among the best in the galaxy. If even a fraction of their tech defected, the Council would be crippled. But it's a risk, Matthew said. Could be bait. Could be factional infighting. Briggs shrugged. This whole damn war is a risk. Matthew looked up, eyes burning. We've come too far to back down now. Earth moved fast. Secret envoys were dispatched. Covert meetings arranged in shadowy corners of the galaxy. And while diplomacy unfolded in the background, the war pressed on. Matthew's fleet continued to harry the Council. Fast raids, precision strikes, coordinated with growing insurgencies on occupied worlds. The war was evolving. It was no longer Council versus Earth. It was old order versus new reality. On Revenant's bridge, the latest message came through. Vaughn read it aloud, voice tight with disbelief. Planet Ardentia, neutral world, has declared full alliance with Earth. A stunned silence followed. Ardentia was a wealthy trade hub, strategically vital, long a staunch Council ally. Briggs exhaled. That'll shake them. Matthew's mind raced. With Ardentia's support, supply lines would open. Safe ports for human fleets, a base deep in Council territory. But it also meant one thing. The war was about to explode. Council response was swift and brutal. Within days, a combined Vari-Orth fleet was dispatched to retake Ardentia. Massive forces far beyond anything seen so far. Matthew received intel briefing with cold focus. This is it, he said. The turning point, Briggs nodded. If we hold Ardentia, we prove Earth can win. And if we lose, Briggs's face was grim. Then we lose everything. Preparations began at once. Matthew personally led the fleet toward Ardentia. Reinforcements streamed in. Ships from across Solarian space. Volunteers from neutral worlds. Ardentian defense forces. In orbit above planet, a ragtag but determined fleet assembled. Matthew addressed the mover fleet-wide communication. This is no longer about survival, he said. This is about the future. He paused, voice steel. The Council fears us best we dare to stand. Today, we show the galaxy why. Across the fleet, thousands of voices answered as one. For Earth, for freedom. And as the enemy fleet loomed in the distance, engines flaring, weapons charged, Matthew stood on the Revenant's bridge, eyes cold. They wanted a war, he said quietly. They're about to get one. The enemy fleet appeared like a storm on the edge of space. Through the Revenant's reinforced viewports, Captain Matthew Reins watched as the Council forces closed in. Hundreds of ships, battlecruisers, assault carriers, frigates in tight, brutal formations bearing down on Ardentia with grim purpose. They're not here to negotiate, Commander Briggs muttered beside him. Matthew didn't answer. He didn't have to. Everyone on the bridge knew what was coming. Lieutenant Vaughn's voice was steady. Council fleet strength confirmed. Over 200 vessels, primary elements, Varkari heavy cruisers, Oroxaso wings, Juno, and Dreadnought support. Matthew's eyes never left the tactical display. And our side. 74 Carcelarian vessels, 25 Ardentan defense ships, 8 neutral volunteers, mostly retrofit freighters and corvettes, outnumbered more than 2 to 1. Outgunned, outclassed, but not outmatched. Not today. Status on planetary defenses? Matthew asked. Ardentia's orbital platforms are active. Anti-ship batteries online. Surface-to-orbit cannons on full charge. Van reported. They're ready, Matthew allowed a tight nod. Ardentia had thrown in completely with Earth. No half measures. They knew Thekos, knew what would happen if the Council broke through, and they were willing to pay it. He turned to Briggs. They'll hit the defense platforms first, Matthew said. Then drive straight for the planet. Briggs nodded grimly. Standard shock assault, overwhelming force, orbital bombardment, mop up survivors. Matthew's voice was steel. Wouldn't let them get that far. The plan was simple, brutal. Hit them first, hard, fast, break their spear. The Revenant would lead a strike force aimed at the heart of the Council formation. The Varari command ships. Cut off the head and the body would flail. It was suicide on paper, but it was the on-license they had. Matthew keyed the comms. Fleet-wide channel, a soft chime. "This is Captain Rains," he said. "You see what's coming. You know what's at stake. Today, Earth doesn't stand alone. Today, Ardentia stands with us. Free men and women, not Council slaves." He paused, voice low and cold. "They want us broken. They want us afraid." He looked around at his crew, every face steady. "Let's show them what they should fear." The fleets closed the distance. Matthew stood at the center of the Revenant's bridge, hands clasped behind his back as the first shots were fired. Long-range railguns from Ardentia's platforms opened up, slamming into Theliting Council ships. Explosions blossomed in the black. 1, 2 Vera frigates crippled. The Council responded with a wall of plasma and missiles. Energy beams slashed across the void. The battle had begun. "Formations Alpha through Delta. Engage," Matthew ordered. The Silurian ships surged forward, engines flaring, weapons hot. The Revenant led the spearhead, flanked by heavy cruisers Aegis and Hammerfall, with squadrons of destroyers screening ahead. Matthew's target was clear. The Varari command carrier Zerethal, at the center of the enemy lines. "Punch a hole," Matthew said. The clash was brutal. Council fighters swarmed like hornets, weaving between the massive ships. Human flak cannons filled space with deadly fire, carving through thietackers. Explosions tore through the blackness. Ships burned, shattered, drifted. On the Revenant, damage alarms howled. "Shields at 70%, Vaughn called. "Maintain course," Matthew said. An Auric heavy frigate swung into their path, turrets blazing. Matthew didn't hesitate. Forward batteries fire. Blinding beams of energy lanced out, tearing into the frig's hull. It broke apart, venting atmosphere in flame. "Target down," Vaughn confirmed. The Revenant plunged through the debris, engines roaring. Ahead, the Zerethal loomed. Briggs leaned close. "We're in deep. Council reinforcements moving to intercept." "We don't stop," Matthew said, "even if we don't make it." Matthew's mouth twisted into a grim smile. "We macate." He keyed the fleet comms. "All ships, focus fire on Zerethal. Bring it down." One by one, Silurian cruisers and destroyers locked on. Missiles straked out. Energy beams cut the void. The Zerethal's shields flared, staggered, collapsed. Matthew seized the moment. All forward batteries full salvo. Fire. The Revenant's guns boomed. A coordinated, devastating barrage that smashed into the carrier's hull. Secondary explosions tore through the Vari flagship. And then a massive detonation. As the Zerethal's reactors went critical, a fireball bloomed, lighting the battlefield. Cheers erupted on the bridge, but Matthew wasn't celebrating. He watched the tactical display, calculating. With the Zerethal destroyed, Council command was in chaos. Enemy formations faltered. Gaps opened. And Matthew saw an opportunity. "Push through," he ordered. "Break their line. Divide their fleet." "The Council's breaking apart," Matthew said. Briggs nodded. "Good." Matthew didn't smile. He wasn't in mood. "We're getting reports," Briggs contended. "Some of the Council's loyalists are regrouping at Varos Prime. It's their last stand." Matthew's gaze sharpened. Varos Prime, the seat of Council power, Theplis, where this had all begun. The betrayal, the blockade, the humiliation of Earth. It was fitting that it wouldn't there. Orders came in from EarthGov 2 days later. Simple, final. Advance to Varos Prime. Deliver terms of surrender. If refused, eliminate remaining council resistance. No more negotiations. No more illusions of peace. Matthew gathered his officers. The council's cornered, he told them. Some will fight to the death. Others may break. Either way, we ended at Varos Prime. Briggs grinned. The first real smile Matthew had seen in weeks. About time. The fleet moved with precision, bypassing scattered council loyalist forces, hammering supply lines, sowing chaos. Everywhere they went, they left a message. Earth doesn't kneel. The Council's power crumbled faster than even Keller's most optimistic estimates. In the rim sectors, warlords once loyal to the Council declared independence or outright switched sides. In the core sectors, uprisings flared. Colonists, merchants, soldiers tired of being ruled by distant, arrogant bureaucrats. And the Council sat paralyzed, terrified, waiting for the hammer to fall. As the Revenant approached Varos Prime, Matthew stood on the bridge, staring at the tactical redoubts. Enemy forces detected in orbit, Vol reported. 23 confirmed ships, mostly Vari and Ore. Matthew nodded. Expected. No reinforcements. No escape routes. Just desperation. He turned to Briggs. Signal them, Matthew said. A moment later, the Council fleet's flagship, the Crown of Varos, responded. Councillor Drellis herself appeared on the hollow feed, her face pale but composed. Captain Rains, she said. Councillor, you intend to force our surrender? I do. She studied him. There was no hatred in her eyes, no smugness, just grim resignation. You've shattered everything, she said. Centuries of order. You've undone it in a year. Matthew's voice was hard. You did thack yourselves. Drellis sighed. And if we refuse? Matthew didn't blink. Then we finish what you started. A long pause. Finally, Drellis spoke. Give me 1 hour. The feed cut. Matthew didn't trust her. He ordered the fleet into full battle readiness. Fighters deployed. Point defense esprimed. Energy banks charged. 1 hour ticked away, and then surrender. The Crown of Varos transmitted formal terms. Unconditional surrender. Immediate dissolution of Council authority. Recognition of Earth's sovereignty and the independence of all aligned worlds. It was over. Matthew stood. Techner, her closest ally among the Tarkin, nodded. Target their outer colonies first. Proxy actions, bleed them, contain them. Make them overextend. Agreed, Drellis said. Full work can wait. But not everyone was convinced. Warlord Korax's eyes burned. You talk of containment, I talk of annihilation. If we hesitate, they will strike first. And for the first time, Drellis wasn't entirely sure he was wrong. Back in Sol, Earth was already moving. Fleet Command was mobilizing faster than anyone had thought possible. The Revenant docked in high orbit over Mars, its crew working around the clock to rearm and repair after the Varos breakout. In Fleet HQ, Captain Matthew Rains stood before a Thehalau map of Sol space, surrounded by admirals, strategists, and ministers. Confirmed reports of Oryx ships massing near the Epsilon Gate, Admiral Harrow said Grimfist. Juno and commerce fleets pulling out of Solarian trade routes. Several border colonies reporting unidentified probes. Matthew's gaze was hard. They were probing our defenses. Exactly. Harrow nodded. Council factions are split. Some want all-out war, others prefer slow escalation, but the knives are out. President Langley appeared on the main holo, her voice steady. We've sent envoys to the neutral sectors, but can't count on allies. We don't need them, Matthew said. But we do need to hit back hard enough to make the Council think twice. There was a pause. The room was tense. Everyone knew the stakes. Finally, Harrow spoke. Agreed. The Oryx are the most dangerous immediate threat. If we wait, they'll strike first. Langley's voice was still then. We don't wait. 2 days later, Earth's first counterstrike began. Operation Iron Shield, a rapid deployment of Solarian task forces to the border colonies, designed to fortify key positions and deter Council aggression. Matthew led the first wave personally aboard the REVENANT. As the fleet slipped through the Proxima Gate, he stood on the bridge, watching the stars blur past. Commander Briggs joined him. Reports just in, he said quietly. Aura craters hit the Sigma Eridani colony. Civilian losses heavy. Matthew's fists clenched. Any survivors? Some. Local militia drove them off barely. Matthew's jaw tightened. The Council's so-called containment had already begun. They weren't wasting time with diplomacy anymore. Signal all fleet elements, he said. No more passive defense. If they come for us, we hit back. Double, Captain. At Sigma Eridani, the scars of the raid were fresh. Burned-out habitats, shattered orbital stations, drifting wreckage. All the grim marks of Aura savagery. When the Revenant emerged from hyperspace, the survivors' desperate transmissions flooded in. This is Governor Strathmore. To any Terran fleet, we need aid. They took thousands. Matthew's face was a mask of cold fury. Deploy relief teams, he ordered. Full military quarantine, and I want every Auric ship in this sector hunted down. Commander Briggs hesitated. That'll escalate things fast, sir. Matthew's voice was low. Dangerous. Good. Let them know Earth won't be a punching bag. The first strike came less than a day later. Auric's raiders, fast, brutal, overconfident, hit the outer Sigma defense perimeter. But this time, they weren't facing helpless civilians. This Timothy faced Revenant. The battle was short and bloody. Matthew stood at the center of the command deck, eyes locked on the tactical display. Target their engines, he ordered. No escape. Beams and missiles ripped into the Auric ships, cutting them apart. Phenomy's feigned ruthlessness met something colder. Human fury honed by betrayal. When it was over, debris fields drifted where the raiders had been. Briggs exhaled. They weren't expecting us to fight back this hard. They will now, Matthew said, and we're just getting started. The news spread like wildfire. Earth fleet destroys Auric's raiders at Sigma. Human counterstrike raises tensions. Council divided. Neutral worlds question Council legitimacy after civilian massacre. Even in the core Council sectors, protests erupted. Civilian populations, weary of endless wars and Council arrogance, began questioning why Earth was being targeted at all. In the Council chambers, panic grew. This is spiraling out of control, Syndic Vera said bitterly. Public opinion is turning. They drew first blood. Warlord Karorik snarled. Now they must pay. Councillor Drellis said nothing for a long moment. Inside, her calculations shifted. The humans were not breaking. If anything, they were uniting. And if the war continued this way, the Council might not survive it. But too much pride, too much blood had already been spilled. There was no going back now. Back aboard the Revenant, Matthew knew it too. As he looked over the latest intelligence reports, he saw of truth written in every line. The Council wouldn't stop. They couldn't afford to. If Earth stood tall, the Council's authority would crumble. Other species would follow. The old order would collapse. And so, they would fight to preserve their power, just as humanity would fight to preserve its freedom. Commander Briggs entered the ready room, face grim. Message from Fleet Command, sir, he said. New orders? Matthew glanced at the display and his eyes narrowed. It was exactly what he'd expected. The Council was massing a joint strike fleet near the Epsilon Gate, bigger than anything they'd used so far. This wouldn't be another raid. This would be war. Matthew stood slowly, his expression hard. Signal the fleet, he said quietly. Prepare for full combat operations. Briggs nodded once. "Aye, Captain." As the door closed behind him, Matthew looked out at the stars. They'd tried to box Earth in, tried to break its spirit with arrogance and lies, but no, they'd pushed too far, and humanity had nothing left to lose. The Epsilon Gate loomed ahead. A vast ring of ancient alien metal pulsing with faint light against the darkness of space. Beyond it lay the contested sectors and the Council's assembled strike fleet. From the Revenant Bridge, Captain Matthew Rains watched the tactical map update with every passing second. "Enemy fleet composition?" he asked, voice steady. Lieutenant Vaughn answered crisply. 1 Varkari battlecruiser, Turek assault carriers, 4 Juno and heavy frigates and support elements. Estimated total 27 ships. A formidable force, not overwhelming, but carefully chosen to test Earth's resolve. Commander Briggs leaned in. "They're not here to negotiate." "No," Matthew agreed. "They're here to bleed us, but they would find Earth ready." Operation Iron Shield had mobilized faster than anyone on the Council expected. Within hours of the Sigma Aerodani battle, human fleets across the border sectors had shifted into full combat posture. Now at Epsilon, the Solarian 5th and 6th Fleets, nearly 40 warships under Matthew's command, waited in silence. "Status of the fleet?" Matthew asked. "All ships holding position?" Vaughn reported. "Weapons hot. Crews on full alert." Matthew looked out over his crew. Hardened men and women. Veterans off endless brush wars and pirate hunts. Now facing the most powerful military alliance in the galaxy. They stood without flinching. "Open fleet-wide channel," he ordered. A soft chime confirmed the link. Matthew spoke, his voice carrying across void to every ship. "This is Captain Rains. You all know why we're here. The Council chose this path. They thought we'd back down. That Earth would kneel." He paused, letting the words settle. "But today, we show them what it means to stand. We fight not for conquest, but for survival. For every colony they burned, every life they took. We fight because no one else will defend us." Another pause. Then cold steel. "We fight and we will win." The enemy fleet emerged minutes later, engines flaring as they dropped from hyperspace. "Council fleet entering combat range," Vaughn called. No hails, no attempt at communication. Of course not. The Council had already committed to this fight. Diplomacy was dead. "Target priority?" Briggs asked quietly, Matthew's eyes locked on the display. "Barkari battle cruiser first. Break their spear, then roll up the flanks. Has straightened, every muscle coiled. Sound general quarters, all hands. Battle stations." A deep klaxon echoed through the Revenant, followed by the tense hum of a ship preparing for war. The first shots came from the Council side. Bright lances of plasma streaking toward the human lines. "Enemy opening fire," Vaughn confirmed. No holding back, Matthew's jaw tightened. "Return fire all batteries." The Revenant's heavy cannons boomed, energy beams ripping through Thevoid. Across the line, Earth's ships unleashed a disciplined counterval. Within moments, the space around the Epsilon Gate became a maelstrom. Shields flaring, ships maneuvering at breakneck speed. Matthew moved through the bridge, issuing rapid orders. "Frigates, screening formation. Keep the Auric bombers off our heavies. Vaughn, track Juno and flanking elements. I want firing solutions ready. Briggs, time our main salvo for when that battle cruiser's shield cycle." The battle unfolded fast. Thevarkari battlecruiser drove straight into the heart of the human formation. Turrets blazing around it. The aura carriers launched wave after wave of fighters, fast, agile, deadly. But Thehumans were ready. Solarian destroyers swept in. Flak cannons shredded incoming bombers. Frigates lured Juno and ships into crossfire traps, hammering them with mass volleys. And at the center, Revenant led the charge. Main batteries, full power, Matthew ordered. Target their shield nodes. Massive beams lanced out, slamming into the Vari ship. Its shields rippled, staggered, then faltered. Direct hit, Vaughn called. Enemy shields down. Finish it, Matthew said coldly. A coordinated salvo from 3 human cruisers struck home, tearing through the battle cruiser's armor. Explosions rippled along its hull, then a final blinding blast as its shrieker went critical. A cheer rose from the human cums, quickly stifled as the fight raged on. The loss of Viscia. The council chamber reeked of conceit that day. Captain Matthew Rains had stood at the vast, polished obsidian table for 6 relentless hours, enduring condescension wrapped in the language of diplomacy. Surrounding him, the so-called great powers of the galaxy, the Virari, the Junoan Syndics, the Auric Dominion took turns reminding humanity of its station. An untested species, a reckless species, a species presumptuous enough to demand parity. Matthew had anticipated this moment. The warnings had been clear. Long before Earth's envoys stepped into the spiral tower of the Galactic Council on Varos Prime, whispers of betrayal had reached them. Promised trade routes quietly dissolved. Security pacts rewritten in silence. Delegates murmured of embargoes and containment. And now, after 6 hours of veiled ultimatums masquerading as negotiations, the verdict was undeniable. Humanity was being boxed in, neutered, smiled at, then stabbed in the back. Matthew's jaw tightened as Counselor Drellis of the Virari finished speaking, her 4 eyes gleaming with counterfeit benevolence. For the sake of galactic harmony, she intoned, Earth must accept the restrictions on its military growth. Surely, Captain Rains, you understand this is for the greater good. The chamber fell mute, every gaze fixed on him. The translation implants fed each polite barb into his ear with surgical clarity. For the greater good. For whose good? Matthew wondered, coldly. Certainly not Earth's. He rose slowly, deliberately. Behind him Ambassador Hall and the rest of the Terran delegation sat ashen, lips pressed thin. They already knew the script. Matthew skipped the pleasantries, no flattering preface, no hollow thanks for council guidance. He stared at the gathered faces, the very species who'd begged for Terran aid during the Trivor incursions only a decade prior, back when human fleets had turned the tide for 6 core worlds. How rapidly gratitude curdled into condescension. His voice came out like forged steel. Listen well, he said. Earth will not surrender its right to self-defense, nor will we accept a subordinate status in a council for which we have bled and sacrificed more than most. Drellis's smile faltered. The Auric warlord beside her rumbled discontent. Matthew pressed on, scanning the chamber so each delegate felt the weight of his words. For months, he continued, we've borne these talks despite sabotage to our trade lanes, despite your refusal to address assaults on our colonies. And now you ask us to sign away our future. He let that sit. Earth will not comply. Effective immediately, we withdraw from these negotiations. A ripple of shock moved through the hall. A Junoan syndicate envoy, pale and refined, half rose to protest. Finally, Counselor Drellis spoke again, her voice brittle. This is a dangerous course, Captain. It will isolate your species. Matthew allowed himself a thin smile, not one of warmth, but of contempt. We'd rather stand alone than kneel among liars. Without another word, he turned. The human delegation followed, boots echoing against the polished floor as they strode from the chamber. Behind them, the stunned council members sat frozen. In the hours that followed, the news swept across the galaxy. Humans withdraw from peace talks. The Galaxy Council admits its blunder. The headlines were everywhere. Public outcry in some sectors, quiet panic in others. On Earth, there was grim approval. Humanity had been humiliated enough. Back on his ship, ISS Revenant, Matthew watched the news feeds with a stony expression. Too late. The council was scrambling, issuing statements, offering half-hearted apologies, blaming schiscommunic. But the die was cast, and Matthew knew one thing. There would no peace now. The ISS Revenant slipped into high orbit above Verosprime within the hour, its massive bulk dwarfing the civilian vessels clustered near the station rings. From the ship's command deck, Captain Matthew Ryan stood at the main viewport, arms folded, eyes cold. "Status?" he asked. Commander Briggs, a grizzled veteran with deep lines on his face and a voice like gravel, answered with hesitation. "Our delegation is aboard. All ships in the Carrion fleet are reporting ready for departure. Any signal of pursuit?" Briggs shook his head. "Nothing overt, but the local traffic controls stalling our clearance. Probably waiting for a council warship to escort us." Matthew's jaw clenched. Of course they were. Run a full ECM sweep. Ready shields and weapons quietly. If they try to box us in, we punch through. Briggs's smile was grim. Understood. Matthew turned back to the viewport, watching the swirling clouds of the planet below. It had been a damn long few weeks, months really, of hollow speeches, false promises, and quite betrayals. And now, finally, humanity had made its stand. But stands had consequences. He keyed the communication. "Get me, Ambassador Holt." A moment later, Holt's face appeared on the console, weary, drawn. The man looked 10 years older than he had a month ago. Captain Holt greeted him. "I assume you've seen the Council's latest statement." "I've seen it." It was pathetic. The Council's official communique had gone out just minutes after they'd stormed from the chamber. A desperate attempt to control the narrative. Words like misunderstanding, temporary withdrawal, ongoing friendship were thrown around. "Hollow, they're trying to paint us as sensible aggressors," Hall said bitterly. "Saying our withdrawal was emotional, impulsive," Matthew snorted. "Let them. Anyone paying attention knows the truth." Holt leaned forward slightly. "EarthGov's already responding. President Langley issued a statement an hour ago. We're mobilizing reserves." Matthew's eyes narrowed. That was faster than he'd expected, but not surprising. The writing had been on the wall for weeks. The blockade of the Martian trade convoys, the pirate raids in the Teti colonies that had Council fingerprints all over them. The assassination attempt on the Terran ambassador last month, quietly swept under the rug. And now open politicalization. "What's our fallback?" Matthew asked. Holt's mouth was tight. "Fleet commands issuing silent orders to all Carrion task forces. Defensive posture. But we both know that's going to escalate. The Earth will push. The Ferrari won't want to look weak." Matthew nodded. "And if they do, then Earth stands alone." Matthew let out a slow breath. The phrase had been used so many times in recent days, it was almost cliché. But the meaning was real. Earth was alone, isolated by the very council it had once helped save. And soon it would be at war. The tension aboard the Revenant was thick as the hours passed. The clearance Sealy dragged on. The council's traffic control, citing technical difficulties. But Matthew wasn't fooled. He knew a stalling action when he saw one in the tactical pit. Lieutenant Vaughn was running constant scans. "Captain," she reported Council fleet elements moving into position. One cruiser, 2 frigates coming in from the station's dark side. Matthew's face hardened. "Briggs." The old commander was already moving. "All batteries online. ECM active. Fighters on standby." Matthew opened a channel to Thefleet. "All Carrierian vessels prepare for immediate departure. No hostile action unless fired upon. But if they block us, we force through." One by one, the acknowledgements came back. He switched to the com again. "Ambassador Holt, secure yourself. We're punching out." "Understood. Godspeed, Captain." Matthew stood at the center off the bridge, every muscle tight, gaze fixed on the tactical display. 3 Council warships. They weren't enough to truly threaten the Revenant. Not if it fought back, but a single shot exchanged here could spark a war. And that, he suspected, was exactly what some Council factions wanted. When the transmission came through, it was no surprise. ISS Revenant. This is Varus Prime Control, in the clipped voice of a Juno and officer. You are ordered to hold position. A Council security detachment will escort your fleet to a secure anchorage for further diplomatic review. Matthew's reply was ice. Negative, Varus Control. We are departing. Any attempt to impede will be considered hostile. The silence that followed was deafening. Then a flicker on the tactical board. Cruiser charge-in weapons, Vaughn's shouted, shields up. Briggs barked. Matthew's voice was like a blade. Helm full burn. Break orbit. Formation Delta. The Revenant's massive engines roared tow life. The ship surging forward. All around it, the Solarian fleet followed. Frigates, cruisers, even a few battered civilian escort ships. On the display, the Council warships shifted, blocking their path. Council cruiser locking missiles, Vaughn called. Matthew didn't hesitate, firing solution on their engines only if they shoot. Seconds stretched like hours. Then a missile lock warning blared. Missiles incoming. Fire. The Revenant's heavy batteries spoke, beams of searing energy lancing out. The Council cruiser's forward shields collapsed under the barrage, its drive section hammered. A moment later, the carrion ships unleashed their own counterfire, punching a hole through the blockade. The Revenant roared past the crippled cruiser, the rest of the fleet in tight formation behind it. Status, Matthew demanded. Minor shield damage, Briggs reported. No casualties. Council cruiser disabled. No pursuit. Matthew's jaw was tight. Good. Set course for Sol. Max burn. Let's get the hell out of their space. The escape sparked a galactic firestorm. By the time the Revenant reached the Sol Gate 4 days later, the news had already spread. Footage of the Council's blockade attempt and the human fleet. Breakout flooded every media channel. Council warships fire on human delegation. Earth fleet forces block Aderan. Casualties averted. Galactic tensions explode after failed peace talks. And inevitably, humans withdraw from peace talks. The Galaxy Council admits its blunder. It was the phrase that stuck. Across neutral worlds, independentist,